can now actually talk to us because she's out of the courthouse. Kristina, you're right there in front of the steps. Tell us what you can.
David, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing close-up cameras from our amazing photographers and from Penny Shot of the crowd outside here, but the view when you walk out of that courthouse to just see the amount of people that are out here screaming, chanting, those chants were so loud, we actually could not hear the clerk and the jurors get through the rest of the verdict. They had to repeat themselves because the screams came in so loud outside of the courthouse when the verdict slip was being read that it was hard to hear. It was a real moment. I mean, I remember talking to you last time during the first trial when the mistrial was declared, talking about how kind of the wind was taken out of the room. It was a really emotional but just incredible moment. I think this tops that last year. I mean, the O'Keefe family clearly devastated, some tears, heads hung. They exited the courtroom before the jury even exited the courtroom. Then the jurors exited the courtroom, and I actually did notice one deliberating juror, a woman by my estimate in her 30s. She was crying when they were leaving the courtroom. So this is emotional for everybody involved. Then sentencing happened, and we now know Karen Read was sentenced immediately just to 1 year probation for that OUI conviction. And the emotion was there. By the end, it was just, the media, the clerk, the court staff, the Reed family, and lawyers still in the courtroom, and emotional. Everybody really hugging one another. We are keeping an eye out now. We do expect, I'll tell you, everybody has come out this front door over the course of this entire trial. Nobody has been able, or no players in the trial, if you will, have been able to take a back door. So we are expecting to see everyone come out this front door at one point. We just don't know when. There were places inside of the courthouse in different courtrooms and kind of sequestered rooms where both the O'Keefe family, the Reed families, the defense team, prosecutors, all were able to just spend some private time in between jury notes, during the trial sometimes, so they could be away from everyone. So you imagine everybody's kind of in those rooms right now, getting together before anybody comes outside. I did already reach out to the district attorney's office to ask if the DA will be coming here to make a statement or sending some kind of statement to the media about the results of this trial. Of course, again, Karen Read only convicted on the least included charge, an OUI charge, operating under the influence of alcohol. It was the least possible conviction that she could have received from this jury, and really just what a moment in that courtroom. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any while we wait for them to come out.
So Kristina, we noticed as soon as the verdict was read, you could see the relief on Karen Read's face, and then she was crying. David Yannetti appeared to be crying. Did you see how much emotion was happening there in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of tears that were shed, you might hear the crowd chanting right now. I'm not even sure what they're chanting. The amount of emotion in that courtroom is indescribable, I would say, because there's that anxiety buildup, the 10 to 20 minutes that everybody was in the courtroom waiting for the jury to come in, waiting for that verdict to be read. You saw that look on Karen Read's face. That's really like the verge of tears look that we've really only seen kind of in video clips behind closed doors. She usually really keeps kind of a poker face when she's in the courtroom, but you could tell the emotions were high. Everyone was hugging before the verdict was read, and that once that verdict was read, even though it was so hard to hear it be read over the screams of people outside, what a moment. Tears from the defense team, like you mentioned, the Reed family, of course, the O'Keefe family as well. At the end of the day, they lost a loved one, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. This doesn't bring him back. This is not the verdict that the O'Keefe family was looking for, so really emotional for them as well.
Now, I do think it's important to point out that while this marks the end of the criminal investigation, there's still a civil case. So this was a criminal investigation. This part was a victory for Karen Read, but there's still a next step.
Right, that's the civil case. And, at this point, the civil case that was moving forward, the only thing that the judge stayed in that case is that Karen Read did not have to testify and provide a deposition while this case was going on. So now that this case is over, she has the conviction only on the OUI. That other case can move forward. As we said, there are 2 bars, restaurant establishments also involved in that case. But Kristina, and you know, today you can see the euphoria from her supporters outside. You know, she's been talking every day. I think these folks are hoping that she'll come out and address them for being there all this time and just for staying with her, I'm assuming. Is that what you think?
Absolutely. We expect her team to address this crowd. I mean, the street is shut down right now. There are barricades holding the biggest crowd I've ever seen here back. There's got to be well over 1,000 people here right now. And like you mentioned, you know, the Reid team addressed the media and supporters in the pouring rain last year after a mistrial was declared. So, of course, they'll likely consider this OUI conviction a victory. You know, Karen Reid has been found not guilty on the 3 indictments she was facing. So I certainly imagine they'll come out here and give a statement, which there's been a lot of changes in the last few days because the more people who show up here, the more security plans kind of need to shift. So even the process of Karen Reid and her team leaving court every day has changed. You know, state police have asked the media to stay back a little bit because there's probably 10 times the amount of media that was here over the course of every day of testimony in this trial came here for the verdict, and then well over 1,000 supporters here. So the whole security operation has changed. I mean, you see behind me, there's microphones, there's a podium set up ready for them to speak. We do anticipate they will make a statement when they come out here. The real question is whether or not you'll be able to hear them on the TV microphones, whether or not we'll be able to hear them live outside with the amount of people out here chanting. It's hard to imagine we will be.
And do you see any supporters for the, you know, the O'Keefe family? I know that you said in the past few weeks that a few have shown up here and there. I don't know if there are any folks out there this afternoon.
Yeah, it's tough to describe, right? So the people who physically show up to the courthouse tend to be the people who are here for the Free Karen Reid movement. If you ask them, they say they're also here in support of justice for John O'Keefe. However, last year, a small, maybe dozen to 20 people in blue shirts had shown up as a counter protest to support the O'Keefe family. We've not seen that kind of group here. We've seen really individual people over the course of these last few days kind of show up as counter protesters. But I just want to point out that it's all about who shows up, right? What you see on the cameras, what you see every day when we're walking and we're speaking with Karen Reid, that's because she chooses to go in front of the cameras and make herself public. The O'Keefe family, as is their right, has chosen to stay private, has chosen to not make statements and to really lay low over the course of this trial. Of course, WBZ, we did sit down with Paul O'Keefe, the victim's brother, John's brother, last year, right after a mistrial was declared. But other than that, really, they've chosen to stay pretty subdued. Same with the DA's office. You know, we've reached out numerous times requesting interviews or statements, but there's a gag order in this case that's been on all of the attorneys. And because of that, the only people who've been able to speak out, who are really prominent players in the case, it's Karen Reid, because she's not under that gag order. However, the case is done now, and we assume that that means the gag order has lifted. So any of the attorneys could come out and give a statement now as well, prosecutors or defense attorneys.
Now, while it has been very emotional and there's been plenty of excitement here from the crowd that we can see and hear all around you, Kristina, kind of give us a feel for what the vibe has been like, because it seems like although they are loud and emotional, that they have been peaceful outside of the courthouse.
That's true. I mean, you know, as happens with a crowd this large, there's been a few minor things here and there, but there's been no major disturbances. And I do want to point out, I mean, the amount of state police, Dedham police, there's a lot of extra police on staff here to help out with security, who have really been kind of keeping the crowds in certain locations, kind of keeping the peace. But it has been a peaceful protest. I mean, many times we've compared this to almost like people who all day were waiting for like a concert or something to start, because people came in the morning, the crowd grew all day every day this week. They brought lawn chairs, lunch. They were just set up directly across the street. Is the Registry of Deeds, so it's a public building, and they were just set up there, sitting, camping out, hanging with new friends, and waiting for a verdict. Now that verdict has happened, the crowd is so big that there's no more room for lawn chairs, and everybody's just really standing in a peaceful protest right now.
Kristina, you had a front row seat to this entire trial, and we talked a lot about this week that we couldn't read the jurors' minds, didn't know what they were saying or thinking. I think you have an interesting perspective because you got to watch the jurors and their reaction to different testimony, clips from Karen Reed's various documentaries. Was there something that struck you about the jury the second time around? I know you mentioned that they were younger and more diverse. Is there anything you saw during this trial that made you think, I think they may be leaning in that direction?
So I don't want to say yes to the whole jury.
Sure.
I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, oh, the whole jury reacted in a particular way to something. But there certainly were certain players. I mean, there was one man who's one of the older jurors. I would say maybe in his late 50s, early 60s. He smirked a lot. That's the only way I can describe it. And always on cross-examination, right? No matter who was cross-examining. Cross-examination is really when the fireworks, the sparks kind of fly. He was always kind of smirking, looking back, forth, like he was watching a tennis match whenever cross-examination was happening. So he's someone that stuck out to me. Another person was a younger lady who I'd say was in her 30s or so, who sat in the front row, curly-haired woman. She had a bit more facial reactions to some testimony, and I do remember some tense moments in the final witness of the defense's case with Dr. Rentschler from ARCA. When Hank Brennan was cross-examining him, there were some tense moments where she actually looked up and she shook her head, like, just like that. And, you know, you just wonder, what is she thinking right now? That is the same juror who I just saw with tears in her eyes, who appeared to be crying as they left the courthouse just now, or left the courtroom just now, I should say. So less of a overall they were well behaved. I know that's an odd term to use, but really kind of muted. And then there were little moments here and there when you really noticed particular jurors and their reactions to certain testimony. But I will reiterate, a young jury and a more diverse jury than during the last trial.
And Kristina, you know, I know you just graduated from law school. You'll be studying for the bar exam soon. So you did get a front row seat in this case, which is, you know, really phenomenal. You got to see some amazing lawyering. What did you think about why you thought that the jury sided more with the defense in this case? What do you think the linchpin was for them during the course of this trial?
I think it was the choice of approach the second time around. You know, the first time around, even though the defense has no burden of proof of anything, the first time around the defense really tried to prove a theory of the case, to prove what they believed happened. That didn't happen this time. I mean, you heard the same statement from Alan Jackson in opening and closing, 6 times total. There was no collision, there was no collision, there was no collision. That ended up being the centerpiece of the defense's case, really focused on discrediting any prosecution expert witnesses, discrediting any expert testimony that had been done, discrediting the investigation, and discrediting even the victim's injuries. So I think that really is what kind of changed things the second time around, is the defense's different approach.